My father treated me like trash for 18 years, while my brother was the golden child. He canceled my birthday to console him. But my grandfather arrived and revealed why he never loved me. Now, I inherited everything, and my dad's begging for forgiveness. I'm 22 years old, about to graduate from college, and I need to tell this story because basically, I've been carrying something around for 4 years that destroys me every time I think about it. I guess I should start with my 18th birthday, which is when everything exploded. But really, it all comes from way before, from things I didn't even know existed until my grandfather told me everything. My mom died when I was 16, lung cancer. And that was horrible. Obviously, because she was my favorite person in the world, the only one who really paid attention to me in that house. My dad, Christopher, was always distant with me, you know. He wasn't abusive or anything like that, but he just wasn't there for me in the same way he was for my younger brother Logan. Logan is 3 years younger than me, so he's like 19 now, and for as long as I can remember, my dad treated him like he was the perfect son, the one who could do anything and was never wrong. I could get straight A's in school and my dad would barely tell me good job, but Logan would get a B, and it was like he'd won the Nobel Prize or something. You know what I mean? When Mom was alive, things were more bearable because she compensated for all of that. Like, she came to my soccer games, helped me with homework, we talked about everything. With my dad, it was different. He went to all of Logan's football games, took him fishing on weekends, that kind of father-son stuff he never did with me. I thought maybe it was because Logan was more athletic, more the type my dad liked. I don't know. I was more into reading or playing video games. But after Mom died, the difference became much more obvious and painful. The 2 years after Mom's death were basically me trying to survive in that house. My dad threw himself completely into Logan, like I didn't even exist. Logan got more spoiled, more insufferable, honestly, because he knew he could get away with everything. He'd ask for something and get it. He'd misbehave, and nothing would happen. I, on the other hand, had to follow all the rules to the letter, or my dad would punish me. It was unfair in a way that made me feel like there was something wrong with me. You know? Like, what did I do for my own father to treat me like I was a nuisance? Well, then came my 18th birthday. I'd been planning it with some friends for weeks. Nothing too elaborate. Just a small party at the house. Pizza, video games, maybe watch some movies. I'd asked my dad for permission like a month before and he said yes. No problem. He even said he was going to do a barbecue or something, which surprised me because he normally didn't do that kind of thing for me, but I thought, well, maybe he's trying a little, right? 2 days before my birthday, Logan came home all dramatic because he hadn't made the varsity football team. I mean, he was on the JV team and wanted to move up, but they didn't pick him. I understand that sucks, really, but the way he handled it was literally throwing himself on the couch to cry and complain for hours. And my dad, instead of telling him it was part of life and he had to try harder, decided what Logan needed was a weekend trip to cheer him up. A fishing trip to a lake like 3 hours away, where they were going to stay in a cabin my dad rented out of nowhere. The thing is, that weekend was my birthday. My dad came to my room that night, like 2 days before, and told me, "Hey James, we're gonna have to cancel your party. Logan needs this right now." Just like that. Like it was no big deal. I sat there on my bed, unable to believe it, and I said, "Seriously? You're going to cancel my birthday because Logan didn't make a stupid football team?" And he got mad, told me not to be selfish, that Logan was going through a hard time and I should be more understanding as an older brother. We argued. Honestly, it was ugly. I yelled at him that he always did this, that he always put Logan first, no matter what, and he yelled back that I should stop being dramatic. That it was just a party, and we could do it later. I told him it wasn't just the party, it was everything. All the years of being treated like I didn't matter, and he basically told me that if I didn't shut up and accept his decision, he was going to reconsider paying for my college. That's how he shut me up. With money, with threats, because I'd already been accepted to a pretty good but expensive university, and I depended completely on him paying because we didn't have the money saved and student loans were going to be impossible to pay back. So I swallowed everything, nodded my head, and he left. I had to call my friends and cancel everything, Made up an excuse because I was embarrassed to tell them the truth, that my own dad had canceled my birthday to pamper my brother. The morning of my birthday, which was Saturday, my dad and Logan left early. Logan didn't even say happy birthday to me. Just ran out to the truck with his fishing rod and his stuff. My dad gave me like $50 before leaving and told me, "Buy yourself something nice, we'll be back Sunday." I was left alone in that house all weekend. On my birthday, I basically spent the day lying on the couch watching Netflix, ate cereal for breakfast, a sandwich for lunch, and ordered Chinese food for dinner. It wasn't even good Chinese food. It was from that cheap place that always gets orders wrong. At 11 at night, I was in my room, in my bed, and I started thinking about how that day was supposed to be special, the day I officially became an adult, and instead I was completely alone, because my dad preferred to comfort his favorite son over something that wasn't even that serious. And I cried. I cried like I hadn't cried since my mom's funeral. I cried myself to sleep, and I woke up Sunday morning feeling empty, like something inside me had broken permanently. I thought that maybe that's how the rest of my life was going to be, waiting for crumbs of affection from people who were never going to give me what I needed. But then, like at 10 inches the morning on Sunday, I heard a knock on the door. I wasn't expecting anyone, obviously, so I went in sweatpants and a wrinkled t-shirt. I opened the door, and there was my maternal grandfather, Charles, in his wheelchair, with his nurse beside him. My grandfather lives in another state, like 5 hours by plane, and he's been paralyzed from the waist down since an accident he had like 15 years ago, before I was born. I normally only saw him at Christmas or in the summer when we went to visit him, but there he was, at my house door on a random Sunday. I was in total shock, literally, and he looked at me with that smile of his that always made me feel better and said, "Happy belated birthday, champ. Did you think I was going to forget?" His nurse, whose name is Patricia and she's super nice, greeted me too, and I let them in, still unable to process what was happening. My grandfather explained that he'd called my dad the week before to confirm the details of the party because he wanted to send me a gift, and my dad had told him everything was canceled but didn't give him details. My grandfather, who knows my dad better than anyone, obviously because he was his father-in-law for years, knew something was wrong and decided to fly with Patricia to come see me. We sat in the living room, and he asked me what had happened. At first I tried to downplay it, say it wasn't a big deal, but my grandfather knows me, he's known me my whole life, and he told me, "James, tell me the truth. What did Christopher do now?" And there I broke down again. I told him everything, not just about the birthday, but everything I'd been putting up with the last 2 years. All the years, really. How it was always Logan first and me second. How I felt invisible in my own house. How much I missed my mom because she was the only one who made me feel like I mattered. My grandfather got furious. I'd never seen him that angry. He's normally very calm, very measured, but that day he was red with rage. He told me this wasn't going to continue like this, that he wasn't going to allow me to be treated that way, and that he was going to talk to my dad when he got back. I told him I didn't want to cause more problems, that I was already used to it, but he cut me off and said, "No, James, this isn't right, and it never has been right, and I should have stopped it a long time ago." We spent the rest of Sunday together. We went out to eat at my favorite burger restaurant, went to the movies to see an action film I wanted to see, and my grandfather gave me a gift, which was a new laptop because mine was already half dead, and I was going to need it for college. It was the best day I'd had in months, honestly, and it made me realize how much I'd been putting up with just because I thought I had no other choice. My dad and Logan got home around 8 at night. They came in loaded with their stuff and smelling like fish and nature. Logan was telling a story about a huge fish they almost caught, and they went silent when they saw my grandfather in the living room. My dad went pale, literally, and my grandfather told him, "Christopher, we need to talk. Now, in private." My dad told Logan to go to his room, and I was going to leave too. But my grandfather told me to stay. What followed was basically my grandfather verbally destroying my dad. He told him he was a disgrace as a father. How dare he cancel his older son's birthday to pamper the younger one? How was it possible that he couldn't see what he was doing to his own son? My dad tried to defend himself, saying Logan was going through a hard time, that I was stronger and could handle it, but my grandfather didn't let him finish. He told him those were just excuses, that he'd been failing me for years, and if he couldn't see that, then he was blinder than he thought. Then my grandfather said something that froze me. He said, "I know you have your reasons for resenting James, but he's not to blame for what Rachel did, and it's time you got over it." My dad went even paler and told my grandfather to shut up, that it had nothing to do with it, but my grandfather continued. He looked at me and said, "James, there's something you need to know. Something that explains a lot of things even though it doesn't justify them." And that's when my world fell apart in a different way. My grandfather told me that my mom had had an affair right before getting pregnant with me, with a coworker. It was something brief, ended quickly. But when my mom found out she was pregnant, she wasn't sure who the father was. She confessed everything to my dad, who obviously was devastated but decided to stay with her and get a paternity test when I was born. The first test came back with inconclusive results because of some lab error, so they did a second one, and then a third just to be completely sure. All 3 tests confirmed that my dad was my biological father, without any doubt. But the damage was already done, trust was broken, and although my dad forgave my mom and stayed in the marriage, he could never see me the same way. Every time he looked at me, he remembered the betrayal. He remembered those weeks of uncertainty where he thought I might not be his. When Logan was born, 3 years later, my dad saw him as a fresh start, a son who didn't come with all that emotional baggage, and that's why he treated him differently from the beginning. My mom tried to compensate for years. That's why she was always so close to me, because she knew what my dad was doing even though he never admitted it openly. She begged him to go to therapy, to work on his resentment, but he always refused, said he was fine, that he could handle it. I was in total shock. My dad didn't deny anything my grandfather said, just sat there with his head in his hands. I asked him, "Is it true? All my life you've treated me differently because Mom had an affair?" And he didn't answer me, which was answer enough. I yelled at him that I had nothing to do with that I didn't ask to be born. How could he punish me for something that wasn't even my fault? But he still didn't speak. My grandfather then said something else. He told me he'd changed his will. Originally, my dad was going to inherit a considerable part of his estate when he died, but after finding out about all this, my grandfather decided to change his will, so that part would go to me instead of my dad. He said it was the least he could do after years of not protecting me like he should have, after not realizing what was happening until it was almost too late. My dad stood up then and told my grandfather he had no right to come to his house and tell him how to raise his children. But my grandfather responded, "You're not going to have to worry about that anymore because James is going to come live with me." And he looked at me and said, "If you want, obviously, but the offer is there, you can live with me. It's closer to your university anyway, and Patricia can help take care of you. You won't be alone." I didn't think about it for 2 seconds. I told him yes, I wanted to leave, and my dad exploded, said I was being manipulated, that my grandfather was turning me against him, but I yelled at him that nobody was manipulating me, that he himself had pushed me away with years of neglect and favoritism. Logan came out of his room at that moment because the yelling could be heard, and he looked at me like I was the villain of the story, like I was destroying the family. But he didn't say anything. I packed my bags that same night. My grandfather and Patricia stayed at a nearby hotel and came for me the next morning. My dad didn't come out of his room to say goodbye, and Logan looked at me from the stairs but didn't say anything either. I put my stuff in the car my grandfather had rented, got in, and we left. The first days at my grandfather's house were weird. I was still processing everything, trying to understand how my whole life had been a lie in a way. But my grandfather was incredible. He gave me space when I needed it, but was also there to talk when I wanted to. Patricia cooked delicious meals and treated me like I was her own grandson. For the first time in years, I felt like I was in a place where I was really wanted, where I wasn't a burden or a reminder of something bad. About a week after I moved, I received a long message from my dad. It was an apology, like, he said he'd reflected on everything, that he realized he'd been a bad father, that his resentment toward my mom shouldn't have translated into how he treated me, that I wasn't to blame for anything, and he was deeply sorry. He said he wanted to work on our relationship, that he wanted to be better, to please give him a chance. I showed the message to my grandfather and he told me the decision was mine, that he'd support me in whatever I decided. but I didn't know what to think. Part of me wanted to believe him, wanted to think he really meant it and we could fix things. But another part of me thought maybe he was only saying all that because my grandfather had changed his will and he wanted to make sure he looked good. I didn't respond to the message. I didn't know what to say, and honestly, I wasn't ready to forgive him, if I ever was going to be. 4 months passed without me talking to my dad or Logan. I started college, which was like 40 minutes from my grandfather's house, and I did incredibly well from the start. I made friends, joined a video game club, my grades were excellent, and for the first time in my life, I felt like I was exactly where I was supposed to be. My grandfather came to some of my events at the university when he could, and that meant the world to me because my dad had never done that. During those 4 years of college, my dad sent me messages occasionally. Birthday wishes, Merry Christmas, that kind of thing. Sometimes longer messages, asking how I was, how school was going. I almost never responded. And when I did, it was with short answers like, fine, thanks. I didn't have the energy or desire to rebuild something with him. Not after everything. Logan never contacted me once, which didn't surprise me but still hurt a little, I guess. About 2 weeks ago, just when I was in my last weeks before graduating, I received an email from my dad. It was longer than the previous messages. Said he'd heard through my grandfather that I was about to graduate, that he was proud of me, that he knew I was going to do great things. He said again that he was sorry for everything that happened, that he understood if I never wanted to forgive him. But he wanted me to know he would always be my father, and he would always be there if I ever needed him. I read it like 3 times and didn't know what to feel. I haven't responded yet. My graduation is in 2 weeks. My grandfather is going to be there with Patricia. I have friends who are going, and that's enough for me. I don't know if I'll ever forgive my dad or if we'll be able to have some kind of relationship. Honestly, I don't know. But what I do know is that I'm okay now. Better than I was in a long time, and that's more than I thought I was going to have when I was alone in that house on my 18th birthday. My grandfather tells me to take all the time I need, that there's no rush to resolve anything, and I think he's right. For now, I'm focused on graduating, on getting a good job, on building my own life away from all that family drama. And if someday my dad and I can really talk and fix things, fine. But if not, I'm going to be okay too. That's what I've learned these last 4 years, that I can be okay without the approval of people who were supposed to love me unconditionally but didn't.